I was a professional footballer for 20 years.
Shearer!
I was taught to head a football and practiced sometimes over 100 times a day in training.
Alan Shearer, who else?
Never ever did I think heading footballs could be dangerous for me.
The new research which points to risks for professional footballers.
Findings will fuel concerns that players' brains are being permanently damaged.
3 of the surviving members of England's 1966 World Cup winning team suffering from dementia.
I know ex-footballers that have had this.
As a footballer, you don't expect to die at 59 of brain damage.
Is there a link because you head a football?
It's a disgrace. How they could cover it up.
I want to find out, I want to learn. I'm not sure how I'll feel. I'll be very nervous.
Each time the ball is coming in contact with the head, there's just that little bit more damage.
I don't know what I'm going to find out. People may be scared to find out some answers. You've got 50,000 members. Do we know how many of those have dementia?
No, I don't.
I'm asking the questions that should have been answered many, many years ago.
Could the beautiful game be dangerous? I'm Alan Shearer. I've been in football all my life. I've got to say that nothing quite beats the days of being out there. That's what I always dreamed of. Playing at the top, playing for my country, and above all, scoring goals. I scored 260 Premier League goals, a fifth of them with my head, which must put me at risk if there is science behind the headlines about dementia and football. And if there is scientific proof, should I be talking about the game I love in the way I do? He's a good, honest centre-half, and it was an excellent header and won the game. For every goal I scored with a header in a game, I must have practiced it 1,000 times in training. Just like Jeff Astle did. He was good enough to play up front for England, but he was best loved at West Bromwich Albion.
Astle! Jeff Astle has achieved the record. He's scored in every round of the FA Cup.
He was a great header of the ball and scored 174 goals. The Baggies fans called him the king.
Hello, Jeff.
Hello, David.
Oh, they'll be thinking about us when we are far away. I'm home.
Jeff died in 2002 at the age of 59. At his inquest, the coroner said he died of dementia, brought on by years of heading a football. The first time such a connection had officially been made. So I've come to the West Midlands to meet Jeff's daughter, Dawn.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks very much. Lovely to meet you.
And you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fabulous, eh?
Brilliant. I like the way they've got the 9
Number
in the
9,
crown.
special number
Yeah.
9. So tell us about your dad when you first noticed something wasn't quite right.
Well, he was nearly 55 and my son was born and he couldn't remember his name. And he kept saying, what's his name again? And I said, it's Matthew, Dad, and it's not like an unusual name or anything. And I just kept thinking, why can't I remember his name? He suddenly came out one day and said, is my mum still alive? And I thought, like, what? She's been dead like 17, 18 years. And I thought, what's he keep saying these weird things for? And it was really hard for Mum to get him to go to the doctors because, as I say, he didn't think there was anything wrong. She got him to go in the end to the doctors. All the time he was in with the doctor, he was still glaring at Mum as if to say, why am I here? And that's when, I suppose, your life sort of changed forever then, because they said, you know, we're really sorry, but we think Jeff's got early onset dementia.
And then how difficult were the next 3 or 4 years? Take your time.
I know. It was the most devastating, brutal thing I've ever seen in my life. It used to kill me to go and see him. He'd try and get out of a moving car, you're a nervous wreck around him. He would eat things you're not supposed to eat. he'd just go into the fridge and get a big scoop of butter and add, you know, his hand and put it in his mouth, and my dad had impeccable table manners. Yeah. It was devastating to see him just completely change. He looked like Dad in the first few years, but when the disease really took a hold on him, the difference in how he looked, he was 59 when he died and he looked 159. Right. And it just killed us.
At the inquest today, the coroner heard from medical experts that the damage to Mr. Astle's brain was the result of repeated minor trauma, probably caused by heading a heavy football.
Pathologist who examined Dad's brain described how badly damaged it was. There was trauma right the way through it. And that's when he said it was the repeated heading of footballs that he believed had caused all this trauma over a period of years. The ruling was industrial disease, and so in other words, Dad's job had killed him. And it was a landmark decision. And it wasn't until 2014, when his brain was re-examined and it was found that he didn't have Alzheimer's, he had CTE, or boxer's brain, that's when we wanted to know why. Yeah. You know, my dad was a footballer, how did he end up with boxer's brain?
So you're absolutely convinced that heading a football definitely had something to do
Definitely.
with your...
Absolutely, definitely.
Before I spoke with Dawn, I was aware of the Jeff Astle situation. But it's only now I realise that Dawn and her family have been through sheer hell. Now, I've got to try and understand this a lot more because Dawn was mentioning boxer's brain, CTE, dementia. How on earth this can be involved or linked in any way with football or heading a football.
Jeff's is not an isolated case. Studies by University College London have revealed CTE in 4 more footballers' brains. I need answers, so I'm travelling to Glasgow to meet Dr. Willie Stewart, the pathologist who found the disease in Jeff Astle's brain. Can you just explain dementia, CTE?
Great questions.
Yeah.
So, dementia is where you've got a loss of normal brain function. Your memory is affected, sometimes your personality is affected, and it can progress to other systems affected as well.
Right.
So it's a very loose term. There's lots and lots of different types of dementia. People are really familiar with Alzheimer's disease, but there are many other types of dementia too. And this one that we are particularly interested in is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, much easier to say. And that's been around for an awful long time. We used to recognise it and see it fairly regularly in former boxers, but actually it could be a footballer's brain or it could be a rugby player's brain. It was a realisation that you didn't have to be a boxer to get this pathology, that actually it was exposure to brain injury and impacts that was the problem.
Is that what you found in Jeff Astle's brain?
Yeah.
CTE is a form of dementia that can be found only after death. So I'm going to be looking at samples of brains that have been removed.
Hope I'm not squeamish.
And just it. Thank you. What we have here is I've got 3 recent cases. You're looking a bit...
I'm just frowning, that's all.
3 recent cases of dementia. They've all been dissected, so they're in bits, but just to let you see what we're dealing with. That is somebody who's dementia who didn't participate in sport, wasn't a sports person. This is football, This is rugby. The important thing here is that even when they've got dementia, there are very limited clues we have that allow us to say what kind of dementia they might have had. They're all a bit shrunken. They all show signs of damage in different ways. And when we're talking about CTE, or head injury specific dementia, to be more accurate, physically there isn't that much to see at all. It's all down a microscope.
It's not just my untrained eye. We have to give this grey matter some colour, literally. Reveal the damage with dye.
We use special techniques to show up proteins in the brain. The stain we're using to show this abnormal protein up stains things brown. Protein appearing in the brain is abnormal and is associated with people with dementia, in that somebody who has no dementia has none of this protein. You see that hole in the middle, that's
Clear
a blood
hole,
vessel. Yeah, that clear hole is a blood vessel. How we can spot it as CTE is the way that the protein clusters around blood vessels like that. It's so badly damaged that the structure of the brain has begun to disintegrate on it.
So you think that is down to him playing football?
It's all, the only thing we can say that links the cases that we've been seeing is exposure to brain injury. What we can't do is say exactly which part of the activity it was.
Yeah.
You know, and the question people ask is it the heading? We can't say that.
Because how do you know that it's not because he was heading the back of someone's head, or he had 3 or 4 elbows during a game, or
which is why I'm always very cautious when people say, try to say it's the heading in football, or it's the scrum in rugby, or football heading. We just don't have information on. We need to understand better what happens there to be able to work out what might be happening later on.
Okay.
It's not that reassuring, because if the greater danger comes from more obvious shocks to the head, well, I may qualify on that score. It would be fair to say I was a pretty robust player who gave a few knocks and took a few. Even so, what I did was surely never like this. To say this leads to CTE, or especially this, doesn't come as any sort of surprise. But can CTE be caused by something as painless as heading? I need to find out more about precisely what happens inside a head that meets a football. Neuroscientist Dr. Michael Gray has a special interest in sport concussion assessment and rehabilitation.
To understand this, we have to start at the beginning. Football is the only sport where the head is used as an instrument to hit the ball. And so now we have to think about what potential damage is there. How is the brain actually protected? The brain is fixed at one point here, right about where my finger is in the brainstem here. And it sits within a fluid-filled bag, and that bag is then inside a hard skull. When the ball comes in contact with the head, what we frequently see in illustrations is this little red bit here, which would suggest that the damage is all occurring down here. And in fact, that's wrong. What we should pay attention to is the wobbling that goes on in the brain. Another way to look at this is with this little jelly mold here. So imagine this jelly mold here is a brain. And if I tap the side of the plate like this, you can see the brain is wobbling. And that's effectively what's happening when the ball hits the head. What's happening inside the brain is that the nerves are getting stretched quite rapidly, and that's causing some structural damage to the nerves. The question then is this dangerous? We can get concussions from a single heading of the ball if the force is strong enough, and this will be seen in symptoms such as seeing stars, such as getting a headache after heading the ball. That will lead to a concussion, and then we should be taking players off the pitch. That's different than the subconcussive injury, which is still creating some damage, but we don't actually know that anything has happened. So we don't see those stars, we don't get the headache, everything feels fine. Each and every time we head the ball and we get this little wobbling, if there is a little bit of damage and we don't let the brain recover, we just keep back out there doing it again and again and again, that's probably not good for the brain.
There is clearly much more work to be done. Tiny changes within the brain are hard to detect. How extensive might this subconcussive damage be? What's easier to measure is the overall scale of the problem. There's 850,000 people in our country that are suffering from dementia. And there are a lot of footballers in those numbers. But the reality is, and the sad thing is, we don't know how many. And that can't be right. I'm going to meet one of them. Matt Tees played professional football in the 60s and 70s in Scotland and England. His strong point was heading the ball. Matt now suffers from dementia.
Hello. How are you?
Fine.
I'm just admiring your gardens.
Oh,
They're beautiful. Lovely to meet you. How are you?
Meet you.
Mate and Matt.
Yeah.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm all right, yeah. I just had 6 pins and a plate put in on my wrist because I fell off my cycle. And,
oh, crikey.
And you've just had your golden wedding anniversary,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
50, isn't
50
it?
years,
Wow.
yeah.
Awesome.
50 years,
I
eh,
don't
Matt?
look that way.
She's put up with you for 50 years, has she?
Oh, thank you.
So life good? Life's hard?
Yes, life's very good days and bad days.
Yeah, I bet,
Good
yeah.
days and take them as they come.
Yeah.
We have a set routine that we must follow. Like, what day is it? Well, you can see up there the days put up every day. Matt's quiet, he doesn't talk. He now doesn't know that this is his house.
That must be so difficult for you.
That's heartbreaking for me, Alan. I think I've learned to be very strong because I've had to be, and it's one of the few times I could have cried. We're into sort of the final stages, which could be 2 years, 10 years, nobody knows.
You say that with ease, as in you've totally accepted and...
I have to.
Yeah.
We have to live with it, Alan, don't we? And it is our way of life.
So tell me who you used to play for and...
I played with Luton.
Luton, yeah.
And then I left Luton and I went to... What's that one?
You played in Scotland.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you come down to Grimsby.
Yeah.
And then you went to London, to Charlton Athletic.
Yeah. Centre half or centre forward?
Centre forward.
Goal scorer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a typical photograph of Matt. Up there and heading that ball.
That's some header.
And there's the happy goal scorer, Matt Tees.
Do you think there is a link to football?
I think there has to be. I've got no doubt about it, Alan. Without trying hard, I can name about 8 people Matt's played football in this area with that's had dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean that speaks volumes, in my opinion. My grandsons, 2 of them are really good footballers, and I went to watch the one in the blue shirt up there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I felt sick.
Really? That bad?
He plays sweeper and he's jumping up, heading them like this, and I just thought, oh, and my heart was going like this. I couldn't believe my reaction because I know what I know now.
Come on in, guys. Hello.
It's a joke.
Nice to meet you. How are you? How are you? Hello. Alan, hello. Nice to meet you. Left hand, I'm afraid. Hi, guys. How are you? You're the centre half and you're the right back. So you both head the ball.
Yeah.
You take after your granddad and head the ball?
Supposedly.
Yeah, do you? Yeah.
They never saw me when I was at my best.
Does it worry you boys about heading the ball? No. You think about it?
It wouldn't. I don't really think about it, but if there is a link, like I wouldn't stop doing it.
And has Grandma told you what she thinks of football and heading and etc.?
Yeah, we've spoke about it like before.
Does that worry you?
A little bit, but obviously I don't think it has changed a bit because obviously when Grandpa used to do it, it would have been like if it was wet, the level balls, they'd have been heavy. Whereas nowadays they're quite light.
Yeah. Do you think our authorities would be running away from this problem?
I've got 2 sons and 3 grandsons, and I want research. I don't want my daughter-in-laws and my grandchildren's partners and wives in the future to go through what we go through now. Life's quite frightening for Matt now.
Yeah. What struck me about seeing the Tees family, it wasn't just Matt that's suffering. It's me that has to carry everything. And the grandkids, it surprised me that they're so keen and wanting and willing to go out and head balls, despite seeing their granddad in the way he is and what their grandma has to deal with.
Are Matt's grandchildren putting themselves in harm's way by heading the ball? I'm returning to Scotland to see if science has the answer.
I did science at school. I did a lot of things at school, but other than football, I wasn't very good at school.
At the University of Stirling, studies are underway specific to heading a football. It's groundbreaking work in the UK, prompted by worries about old players.
We started getting reports of concerns of the effects of long-term heading in football. So we decided to set up a laboratory-controlled trial where we mimicked the effects of heading a ball in a training drill, as in a cross kick from a corner into the goal. But importantly, what we did, we put together psychology and physiology to look at the effects of this impact of the ball on their head.
Until quite recently, that was difficult to look almost inside the brain, what's going on. And now we have that technology from basic science, we can apply that and really to start to understand what is the direct impact.
My guess would be it's not so much heading a football in a match, it's actually doing it in training.
Heading the ball once is not going to give you brain damage.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about brain damage, we're talking about brain changes that are short-lived but repeated over and over again. And yes, we are most worried about the practice drills.
And how far have you come? What results have you had?
First time we tried it, it was very clear that there are immediate brain changes after hitting the ball.
The research they've been doing has focused on modern players, but first we're going to examine the leather footballs of Jeff and Matt's era.
A lot of the thought is that the older balls were heavier.
Had to have been, mustn't they?
But I'll be curious to find out what you think when you're heading the ball.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, ready?
Yeah. That actually feels lighter.
Good point. So when we weighed them, this was actually about 40 grams lighter than this one.
Right.
But the issue with these balls were the fact when they got wet and all the stitching got soaked and everything else.
Yeah.
What we've done is actually soaked the ball in water for 2 hours. And what we'll do, we'll weigh it. So,
okay.
Because we weighed it beforehand, so just see if the weight has changed. So it's gained quite a bit of weight. That was 390 grams when we weighed it.
Right.
And that's now 595 grams. So you can see there is an issue with when the ball is wet, it would have weighed a lot more, no question.
Thankfully, I didn't have to head those big leather, brown, ugly, wet balls, which were incredibly heavy when wet. It seems to me the guys in the 60s and 70s got a bit of a raw deal having to head those things.
I'm now going to do my bit to measure what happens when the ball I did play with meets my head. 19 players have been tested so far. Meet number 20. What precisely will be going on inside this head of mine when it goes back to doing its old job?
We're going to do a battery of tests to look at the effects of heading a football. First of all, we'll be doing a cognitive test.
What's a cognitive test?
The tests of reaction time and of memory.
What type of questions? I hope they're nice and easy ones.
Well, they start easy and they get more difficult.
Okay.
Brilliant. So in the first test, you'll see 6 white boxes. They'll open up in a random order. There's going to be a pattern inside one of the boxes to start off with. You have to remember where the pattern is.
I'll be doing these tests before my headers and again afterwards, and we'll compare the results.
Oh, did I get it wrong?
You must have got one wrong.
Oh. I feel like I'm back at school now.
Yeah. Okay, so this time we're going to do the same thing, but there's going to be 3 patterns, so it does get progressive.
Here's where it gets interesting. Got it wrong again, haven't I? Hey.
Okay, so we're on to the second test. So this one is a test of your spatial working memory. Excellent. The next stage we're going to be using this press pad.
Okay. So am I a genius or what then?
Yeah, I think you did pretty well.
I thought we were going to be here all afternoon.
Okay, Alan, what we're going to do now is look at your balance.
Okay.
We want to see if that changes as a result of doing the heading.
If you want to stand on the balance board, try and keep this circle in the center of the screen. Okay, and step down. Perfect, very good. So that's you done with the balance testing. So now we'll move next door.
What we're going to do now, a bit of a magnetic stimulation on the top of your brain, right, to see how your muscle responds.
So, if you want to give a couple of contractions.
Right, so you see that activity there?
Yes.
That's your brain instructing the muscle to contract, so it sends electrical impulses down to the muscle. So when you see these blue bits here, that's your electrical activity on the muscle. And we're going to be measuring what happens when we actually give a stimulus from the brain.
This is called transcranial magnetic stimulation. It works by placing this coil over your head.
So depending on where Tom stimulates, you'll see a twitch in a different muscle.
All right. We'll see a twitch, will we?
Yeah, we'll see a twitch. This measure looks at how easy the signal travels from your brain to the muscle.
And push up. Halfway there. One. And relax. Good. How does that feel?
Fine.
Okay.
That's the before test done. After I've headed the ball 20 times, we'll do the same tests again, and the team will compare before and after. Now, the bit in the middle.
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay. Ready? And 3, 2, 1. Perfect. That's one.
Good header.
It's really good.
See, now I'm meant to run away with my arm in the air. Celebrate.
And 3, 2, 1.
Ah, I missed that one.
Couple more.
Good header.
Very good. Last one. And 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Perfect.
Right, that's us.
You've successfully completed the heading protocol. Well done.
Cool.
So we'll take the headband off you.
Okay.
Go straight through, eh?
Yep, we go straight through.
Through the lab.
Yeah.
Yep.
See what damage it's done. I'll have a red head now. My hair used to cover it when I was playing. So what differences do you think you'll see here, if any?
Some changes in the way the brain communicates with the muscles. Maybe the impulses take a bit longer to get down or come a bit smaller.
Okay.
It's good. Keep it there, nice and steady. It's really good.
Can't say I enjoyed the jolts going through my skull that much. Balance test, the cognitive tests, and now we wait.
Okay, we've found some interesting results.
Good or bad?
Well,
I don't know how you found the cognitive testing. The results look quite similar to those we were finding in the study itself. You did better on the 8-item portion the first time round, and then you did worse than that the second time round.
we had no change in your balance.
Right.
If anything, a slight improvement, which we also found in the study, probably slightly to do with a learning effect. Magdalena will tell you a little bit about the brain changes we got.
Okay.
So remember that we stimulated your brain and we looked at the neural signal as it traveled from the brain to the muscle it controls.
Yeah.
And we do find in you what we also found in the study. So the blue line is your first time before heading the ball.
Right.
And you see the stim, that big peak at the start.
Yeah.
And then you see silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it starts squibbling again. And then you can see in the red graph underneath that, after heading the ball, that period is longer. That means there's higher levels of inhibition in the brain.
Right, which means?
So really what we're seeing here, after heading the ball, is a disruption of the normal brain chemistry.
If I came in here and looked at the graph, I would say it looked pretty similar. But there is a difference, as in it is a little bit slower, the second one, than it is the first one, but if you come to think of it, then heading a football at 20 or 25 miles per hour, 20 balls like I did in quick succession, then you would think it has to do something.
The arrow afterwards is slightly to the right. It takes longer to return to normal. And in an hour or two's time, we'd expect that to go back to normal. We don't know, because no research has been done, what happens when you head the ball 50 times.
Yeah.
Or you do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day.
Right.
So the cumulative effects, we don't know how they add up.
Right.
And the suspicion is that if you start looking at that, you might find more evidence for changes in brain health as a function of heading the ball.
I'm leaving Stirling, grateful that I didn't play with the old ball when it got wet, but slightly worried that heading any kind of ball causes changes to the brain. There's still work to be done. Football should be encouraging these universities to do as much research as possible. But like everything else, these universities need funding. There's enough money around nowadays in football, just not enough of it has been given to research. It's about time that we had more definitive answers. I've met scientists who are concerned like me, but what about fellow footballers? I'm meeting up with an ex-player who was also my first manager, Chris Nicholl. He taught me so much when it came to heading. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm good,
Nice
mate.
to see you.
I'm very good.
Good. You haven't
All the
changed a
better
bit.
for seeing you.
And you, thanks.
Yeah,
Sit
I've
down.
still got more hair.
I
than
know,
you.
it was terrible. See, that's what you've done to me.
Here's Nicholl. Oh, yes!
Chris was 20 years a player before he went into management, a League Cup winner with Aston Villa. He joined Southampton as a centre-half and rejoined them as manager. He gave me my big break in the game. Do you remember those days at Southampton?
I do,
Do you?
yeah.
Do you?
No,
Not all of them.
I'm brain damaged from heading balls.
Do you-
But
do-
you
do
never
you-
headed enough, did you?
I did. I headed far too much. The reason why is that you had me in the gym most Tuesdays and
Brilliant gym,
Thursdays
wasn't it?
in the gym at Southampton,
Yeah.
chucking balls in the air for me to constantly head balls. Now my memory's
So
terrible.
it's my fault, is it?
Do you genuinely believe that heading balls
Yes,
has
I do.
caused
Because
part
my
of the problem for
memory
you?
is in trouble.
Yeah.
I
How-
forget things.
Where-
I forget regular things like when you forget where your keys are, or I mean, that all people do that. But when you forget where you live, somebody says, "Where do you live?" and it won't.
How long have you had that? How long have you felt like that? Can you remember? Do you know?
Last 4-5 years.
Have you? Yeah. And it's
Something like
and it's
that.
getting worse. You think? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is definitely getting worse.
Have you been to the doctors?
No.
And to
No.
why?
Because I wouldn't change anything anyway.
But
I wouldn't
they
change
could
the
help
way-
you.
Well, maybe, yeah.
So you
But I
would-
do forget things. When somebody says, "Where do you live?" and you've forgotten
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like that is a,
But
is
if-
a bit of a message.
Does it worry you? How you are?
It bothers me, yeah.
Does it?
It does bother me.
But doesn't worry you enough to go to a doctor?
No.
No.
I still wouldn't change it.
And
I
stop
would
being
not
big and
change
brave and bravado.
No,
Does
no.
it? Does it not worry you?
I know
It can
I'm
get
getting worse because things like, oh, whoever put that knife or
Yeah.
whoever put
Yeah.
me toast or it goes. Even knowing that it does damage your brain, I wouldn't change
You
it.
still do it.
I would not change a thing because it was my job to go and head it.
But you
I
also
would
be-
worry if you wanted to change the way you did
No.
because I was part of that.
My immediate reaction is his attitude is so typical of football, of footballers. Doesn't want help, doesn't want to admit that help would be, I think, a huge advantage to him, which is very concerning and very worrying. Football's reluctance to do anything was changed when brain damage was addressed elsewhere, namely in American football. And once a connection was made between brain trauma and CTE, the National Football League moved quickly to set up a compensation fund worth $750 million. Across the United States and across all sports, protecting the head is fully on the agenda.
But on Monday, the U.S. Soccer Federation took the bold step of eliminating heading from youth soccer in an effort to reduce the number of concussions. Per the new rules, children 10 and under will be banned from heading the ball during any official session.
The banning of heading the ball in the United States is really more about concussion rather than heading the ball over and over. And it's really about when these kids go up for a challenge, their heads come in contact with other heads, or they hit an arm, or they fall on the floor, and that creates more significant damage in the brains. Young girls seem to get concussion more frequently than young boys, and we don't really know why that is. We need to understand that. Now the problem is, we don't have conclusive scientific evidence to suggest that heading the ball in young children is going to lead to neurodegeneration later in life. We know, for example, that children have large heads and small necks, so there's more wobbling of the brain inside the skull. Therefore, that can lead to more damage compared with an adult. The other issue that we have is that children's brains are still developing, and they don't have the same neuroprotection as does an adult. We don't have conclusive evidence that is then leading to problems later in life or problems in school. I tend to agree with the idea that very young children really shouldn't be heading the ball. I think we have sufficient evidence that certainly from my point of view, I wouldn't want my children playing on a team where they're heading the ball day in and day out. I don't think it's worth the risk.
Imagine if the game without heading became the new football for everyone at every level. An old England teammate of mine went into coaching, Les Ferdinand, first with Tottenham Hotspur, now Director of Football at Queen's Park Rangers. He is aware of the debate and his responsibility for keeping his young footballers safe. It was very different when he first started heading the ball.
One of the coaches was having a laugh and saying, that's what the young black boys don't head balls. So I made it my mission to be able to head balls. Yeah. From doing all that, it was a major concern for me that, when I started hearing all this.
Did you ask the young boys at Tottenham when you were a coach there, or tell them that they had to improve their heading, they had to do heading practices?
I didn't tell them. They came to me and wanted to improve it.
Right, okay.
Because it was kind of like one of my fortes.
Yeah.
So I carried on, teaching people that wanted to learn the way that I learned.
Because you're aware now of the issue and the subject, would you ever consider changing training techniques for the young boys that are coming through the system here at QPR?
I think what I'd do is, I'd want to see more research. I would speak to the coaches, and we will have this discussion about what we do with the players, because I know, in America they've banned it, so everyone's talking about it, and that's gathering momentum. Whether we need to work the technique with softballs, just until we can gather some more information to know this is good for football or not.
Changes in training, changes on the field.
As he was most of the game, he was first to the corner. He wanted it more than they did.
Long ball football, the English game for so many years, of firing the ball out of the defence, high towards a big man up front, has given way to a more subtle game. A game played with the ball kept on the grass, played to the feet.
Fabulous football.
Expert headers of the ball have had to adapt. John Terry, for example, 5 times a Premier League champion with Chelsea, still playing at Aston Villa.
So you definitely think that you don't head the ball now as much, 1 in training or 2 in a game, as you did years ago?
Yeah, in training it's probably 0 actually, because the ball's probably 99% on the floor.
Right.
I think the game's evolved over the years as well. I think, when I first come on the scene playing, goalkeeper would kick it and I would try and head it as far as I could back up the field.
Right, yeah.
I think the distance side of it has kind of gone out the game a little bit.
With the managers that you've had over the years, has there been a different feeling towards heading regarding foreign coaches or the English coaches?
Well, I think the English coaches definitely, kind of my early days, YTS days, first year pros, that kind of thing, was really kind of specified on, doing that in training drills. I think as the foreign coaches come in, it was a case of, right, can you chest it, can you bring it down? I'm seeing hardly anything at all in training,
right,
unless you're doing a shooting exercise and you might,
compared to when you first started training many years ago.
Yeah, 100%. And that's been the case for the last probably 6-7 years for me. So I think as the game's kind of getting better and we're learning, it's going to help in the future anyway.
Good. Would there ever be a time that you said to your kids, no, you're not allowed to head the ball?
No.
Because you have a boy and a girl.
Yeah, probably the opposite actually. My girl plays at Chelsea, and actually I'm encouraging her to go and attack it, because more so in girls' football, they don't really head the ball, and the kind of corner comes in and everyone kind of shies away from it a little bit. And I'm trying to encourage my girl that rather than that ball hit you and kind of probably do some damage, if you go and attack it and meet the ball, the contact's better. You know, no point heading it on.
There's a technique.
Yeah, there is a technique to it, yeah. And I think if you can do that in the right way, I think you'll prevent, hopefully, anything in the future.
Yeah. The researchers actually say that that girls are more at risk than boys or men.
Yeah.
Will that change your feeling towards that?
Listen, it's my little girl.
Yeah.
She's my world, you know. I think her playing and seeing her playing, she loves football. No, I would still encourage her to go and attack it. I think until there's real evidence to show that players in the future are really suffering, or we can actually pinpoint it to specifically heading the ball. As a parent, as my kids, I wouldn't discourage them to go and head the ball.
Football, slow to change without more evidence, but changing all the same. There are protocols in place when it comes to concussion, which isn't the same thing as the repeated action of heading, but at least shows greater respect for the head, which wasn't always the case in my day.
There's pictures out there with me in a bandage. There's blood teeming down my face where I've gone off, I'd had stitches. They've put a bandage on, I've gone and headed another ball. Stitches have come out and you can visibly see the blood pouring down my face, which is what we did then. It's what was expected of us. You ran off the pitch, you got stitched up and you had to go back on again.
I've taken the big blows, and I played at a time when heading was still very fashionable. I've taken all those little impacts that may add up to something. I seem to qualify on all counts to ask the question, am I in danger? I think the time has come to put myself to the big test, an MRI scan at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, Glasgow. What damage from all that heading will be revealed?
I'm a bit nervous actually now.
Oh, you shouldn't be nervous. So just take a seat, Alan, and I'll get one of the radiographers to go through the MRI checklist with you.
Okie doke. I'm a bit nervous actually. Just give me the words as in to say, you do know that if we find something, then I said, well, if you do, it's best that you tell me so we can work on something.
So surgery in your lifetime, you've had tendon repair on your left knee twice,
Yep.
ACL repair,
Yep.
hernias, fracture dislocated your ankle.
Yep.
That's that the only things you've had? No other
Only
surgeries
things,
at
that's
all?
enough.
Yeah. Nothing else
That's it, yeah.
slipped your mind.
Nice gear, eh?
Going to do a nice structural scan of your brain. So that'll take about 5 minutes. And then we're going to do what we call a spectroscopy scan. So that actually gives us a nice profile of some of the chemicals in your brain.
Right.
And if there's any problems, then we can discuss that further and inform your clinician. If you get any concerns or questions.
No, I think I'm all right.
This,
Ooh.
the scanner.
Yep.
How you doing, Alan? Can you hear me okay? Yep. Okay, just going to get started nice and still. There's going to be some loud noise coming up.
So we're acquiring a scan at the minute, and once we've acquired that, we'll plan the spectroscopy scan. That's the scan that looks at the chemicals in Alan's brain. And again, we'll be looking to see that that's normal.
Found the brain then? I don't like your way you've all been a bit apprehensive here.
No, we're fine. So a nice way I think about the brain is you've got your white matter, which is a bit like all the connections. So you see that in light grey here, and then there's the grey matter, which is the cortex, so the bit on the outside, and the white matter is a bit like the connections with the grey matter, you know, the bit that's doing the thinking or the processing. Your brain's sitting in this sort of protective fluid, so that's what some people think you're looking at the holes in them and you think there's holes in your brain, but that's perfectly normal to have those holes.
Good.
We did notice you had a little artefact, we think, just on the surface of your brain. It might be just from a little bit of metal, maybe.
Have I?
Potentially, yes.
Oh, interesting.
We were able to look at an area of your brain to look at the sort of chemical profile for that area. So this looks normal to me for that area of the brain.
That's reassuring. I'd say that as good news.
That's good news.
Got some metal in my head.
Just an old staple to patch me up after a clash of heads.
I was a little bit nervous when I was going in there, but having the news that everything is fine and is normal, and the question I asked him was if you didn't know who I was, or if I'd played football for 20 years, then would you look at that brain and say it was perfectly normal? The answer came back and said it was perfectly normal and all fine, so very good news.
In general, I've come through it pretty well. I'm as relieved as an old pro can be, I suppose. Nothing to be worried about for the moment. But footballers seem particularly prone to early onset dementia. CTE stalks us. I can't shake off the idea of it and the struggle that may lie ahead. John Stiles knows all about that. He's the son of Nobby, Man United legend and the cheeky face of a golden age. Nobby is one of the 1966 World Cup heroes struck down by dementia.
How's your dad?
Poorly.
Is he?
Yeah, Alan, he's got advanced dementia, so he's now in a home. It's just terrible to watch the person that you love, especially somebody as lively and as nice a person as my dad, just disappear, really.
Do you hold the game responsible?
I'm utterly convinced that heading the ball in training is, I believe it's responsible, but that's only my opinion.
Are you angry? And if so, what are you angry about?
What I'm really angry about, Alan, is that it's been known for a long time now, since Jeff Astley's diagnosis. A coroner actually said heading the ball has contributed to killing him. What I'm angry about is, in that time, nothing's been done.
Yeah.
And dementia is treated as a different... It's not treated as a disease, it's treated like old age. So you've got to cover the cost yourself. And all these families, as well as watching their loved one disappear, have got no help. And most of them have had to sell their homes to pay for the care. Now, if that's been caused by heading the ball, that's a disgrace.
What do you feel that needs to be done?
I think, as they've done in America, they've banned it for under-11s.
Yeah.
I think they should do that now. And I think that...
Banning heading now for kids?
Well, I believe so. In the matches, you head the ball maybe, what, 3-4 times maybe? But it's the training. It's the training that's the problem. And I think coaches shouldn't be throwing missiles at kids' heads for them to head it back. Until we know, they should absolutely stop kids heading balls. My oldest son now is 33. He tried to be a footballer. And I don't feel a guilt as such, but if my boy ends up developing problems, that could have been prevented, and that's a disgrace.
Yeah, that has to be a concern and a worry for you.
Yeah. And I'm almost complicit in that.
I can see why football is reluctant to change its rules. No heading would be like cricket without fast bowling, or rugby banning tackling. But there's also the question of the duty of care. Players who really aren't that old going into care homes to die. Who can help? Well, there's the Professional Footballers Association, the PFA, the Players Union, and there's the Football Association, the FA, the sports governing body. Of course, they need the facts first. Facts that come from research, scientific research. Dawn Astle has campaigned for answers from the authorities since her dad's death 15 years ago. But are they out there looking for them?
The PFA and the FA started a study back in 2001, which was actually before Dad died. But I had an email off the FA to say, unfortunately, it didn't reach its conclusions because they'd done it on 30-odd youngsters in the game and none of them made it as pros, so they fell away. So it only lasted a few years. So that was so bitterly, bitterly disappointing. So it was as if it collapsed, they thought we'd gone away, and they just left it, and that's wrong.
I know you have had meetings that you have asked questions, and they have promised you they would send questions to FIFA, and that was 2 or 3 years ago, and you're still waiting for answers, is that correct?
Football doesn't seem to want to know.
Yeah.
And it should want to know. It's not just about Dad now, it's about all these former footballers and their families who have come forward very bravely. I said it's not just about the past now, It's about football's future. You know, we've got to protect, you know, kids into the game, football's future. The PFA, they only exist for player welfare. They should be screaming from the rooftops for these players. This is killing their players. This should be their priority.
The surprising thing for me is actually no one has stood up and said, you know what, we got this one wrong. We should have looked into it more. No one said, yeah, we've messed up here. We had a chance to do something 15 years ago, and we haven't.
What is being done, or what isn't being done? Gordon Taylor has been Chief Executive of the Players' Union, the PFA, for 36 years. Looking after players past and present is what he does.
You've got 50,000 members.
Yeah.
Do we know how many of those have dementia?
No, I don't.
Is that difficult to do? Can we not? Because that's not an easy thing
At the
to
moment,
do,
with modern
find out?
technology, we're looking to try to establish a really effective database.
There's an anger from my side because over the last 12 months, having sat down with families who have lost loved ones, there's a lot of them feel as if they've been left on their own.
I think it's the PFA's job to do all we can to look to provide support. We have said money is going to be put towards research and also towards respite care for the more and more former players who need help.
I went up and spoke to Willie Stewart and I said to him, what is it you need? And he said, well, we need research. And well, I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, maybe we started the research in 2002, it's now 2017, and it seems as if we're no further forward.
Well, it's...
Because the same questions are still being asked.
They are. The issue of the lower level but continuous problems with heading a ball and whether it will have long-term effects is something we are looking to establish either a definitive link or not at all. And from that point of view, the first research we've done was inconclusive, but we are prepared to commit the money to research.
Do you think it's been swept under the carpet a little bit because of people who have been scared to face lawsuits?
Yeah. Well, it has been put to me that maybe the clubs are very wary because there may be compensation. I said, well, you know, you can only be negligent if you know for certain that there is this link. But what I am saying is football has a duty to see if there is a causal link, because if there is, that could significantly increase the problems in later life, then we'd need to look at the rules of the game and address it. I've been disappointed with FIFA, but as the governing body, they have not taken the lead, or any of the confederations. But it's fair to say the FA have now agreed that we will do this together.
I'm not exactly bowled over by the rush to investigate. Nobody in charge seems to want to know the scale of the problem, if there is one. Football is played everywhere. The game is run by the Football Association, the FA. I've come to their home at St George's Park to see their new medical performance director, Charlotte Cowie. One of Charlotte's first tasks has been to commission research into this issue.
Do you know how many footballers have got dementia?
I think that, in a nutshell, is the question that we're asking. And it sounds quite simple. You can just go to a load of footballers and say, you can check if they've got dementia, and then you've got your answer. What I've probably learned is to run a research project where you get some answers that are reliable. It's more complicated than that. We've used a panel of experts in concussion and in research to try and help us formulate a study that gives us an answer as quickly as possible, if we can do, but more importantly gives us some results that are really reliable.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that research. What is it you're actually doing?
What we'd like to do is make it potentially a shorter study by looking back at ex-professional footballers and working out whether they have health problems, including dementia. We'll also look at their general health. The most important thing is dementia more common in footballers than in the normal population? That's the question that Dawn Astle and everybody else wants to know. Is it a problem? And I think one of the things that we need to try and establish is that if there is a link to football and dementia in some players, if that is related to concussion. And if that is the risk rather than heading, then we need to know that as well.
They've banned heading in America for under 11s.
Yeah.
What's your feeling on that? Do you think we should do that in this country?
I think that is open for review at any point. If evidence is emerging, even early evidence, then I think that's something that we always have to bear in mind. But at the moment, the advice that we're getting from people who are working in that area is that they don't feel that that's the most logical step to take.
There is a lot of anger out there from people who have suffered and the families that are now suffering. Can you understand why?
Yeah, massively. I met with the Astle family,
Yeah.
Talking to Dawn about what she and her family went through, watching Jeff in the sort of the last stages of a really horrific disease.
Yeah.
Probably affected me emotionally a lot, actually, and so I feel very personally invested in trying to see this through and make it happen. And I think we're in a good place now, but I do understand there's been a lot of frustration and, you know, whatever the answers are, a lot of heartache.
It seems as if people are running away from this problem. Do you get that feeling?
Well, I feel that's the one thing that I can say with confidence. I feel we're running towards this problem at the moment. I do feel like...
But that hasn't been the case in the past.
I think the FA's did make a conscious decision not to wait for FIFA or UEFA, and I think that was the right decision, and they've done the right thing on that, but it was probably a difficult decision to make.
As the FA are custodians of the game, do you feel as if apologies are owed to the families that have suffered and still don't have any answers?
I think certainly we need to consider those people, and then I think we need to I think the FA just needs to get this done. That's what I would say.
The research has at last been commissioned. But even before we have new findings, football must look after all players with dementia. Put an end to this sense that once you're done with playing, you can be put on the scrap heap. Life can be confusing and scary for people with dementia, but there are support groups for those who are living with it. One such group offering support to families is Sporting Memories. Former centre forward Matt Tees has invited me along to his local group at Waltham Library in Grimsby. Hello everyone.
Have a seat, Alan.
Thank you.
Well,
Is this my seat?
Yes. By pure coincidence, we've just been doing an Alan Shearer quiz.
Oh,
so
good.
maybe you could answer the last question for us. How many career goals did Alan have to his name by the end of the 97-98 season?
Can you help make an easier one for me? Not at the end. Career goals, 97, 98. Sporting Memories is a charity which works with elderly people who might struggle with dementia, depression or loneliness. They use sport as a way of bringing people together.
We know that people need to remain connected. That's to their family, to their friends, to their communities, and to their passions and interests. And sport is a huge common factor in terms of getting people together. But we also know that to age well, we need to learn new things. And the Sporting Memories Group, you can learn so many different new things around the history and heritage of sport and people's stories.
Dennis, we'll have to stress it's not a dementia-focused group. Not everybody has dementia, but...
Majority?
No, minority.
Right, okay.
But it's about mixing people up,
Yeah.
it's about inclusion and integration.
And they love it.
Everybody has a
Yeah, they love it,
fantastic
yeah.
time.
Sporting Memories have worked with the Professional Footballers Association to produce a leaflet that can be given to former players who have been diagnosed with dementia.
The guide has been written to give some practical advice to people who have got that diagnosis.
And these are ready now?
They're just at the designers, and the PFA will be making them available to members.
Good. That's a start then.
Yeah.
This story is about our people. Footballing people who need the custodians of the game to embrace and fund science to understand the effects of heading. The researchers are out there, because I've met them, they want to do it, but they need funding. But more importantly, they need raw materials to conduct this research, brains. Not just footballing brains or diseased brains, but healthy brains from all walks of life. Heading is an integral part of our game. Coaches need educating to be aware of the dangers of the game, but don't change the rules as yet. I wouldn't ban heading because there isn't enough evidence, and I don't say that lightly. I see thousands and thousands of kids on an evening or a weekend playing football, and I don't want that to change. Let science do its work. Technologies are emerging to provide evidence so that we can make educated decisions about how we take our game forward. It's a tough game, it's a brilliant game. It's known as our beautiful game, but let's make sure it's not a killer game.